Hello and welcome back to my channel, Fat 50 and Anorexic. My name is Lois. Thank you for joining me. Today's episode, I wanted to talk to you about, well, things come to my mind, but I want to really try and stick to my topic. And my topic is how bullying can affect your child, your teenager, or even your adult child in college or at work. How bullying affects us and how that can lead to an eating disorder. They also say that sexual abuse can sometimes, well, a lot of times is present in childhood for someone who is having an eating disorder. Not always, wasn't the case with me, but it is through group I've learned it is a pretty normal thread. It's not a surprise, let's say that. It's not, oh my goodness, my child has anorexia or I have anorexia. Does that mean I don't remember something from my child? And do I have, but if you have trauma, it leads to the eating disorder. It is as simple sometimes as someone simply telling a young person, another young person telling another young person how they lose weight really fast, and I'm not going to say what they are because you don't need any help figuring this out, but sharing those unhealthy ways. And then they learn to use that to lose weight. But what drives them to become anorexic and not someone who's just dieting, there's a huge difference. The person that develops anorexia or bulimia, emotions are associated with food in a huge way, in an abnormal way. It becomes something other than what it is meant to be, which is nourishment for our bodies, enjoyment by taste, and encourages us to eat, right? But I can only speak to anorexia. When you have anorexia, I've had it so long that I don't get hungry anymore. My brain doesn't tell me to eat because it's been over 40 years for me. And this losing my sense of hunger happened probably, I'd say my late 20s, so I had it at least 10 years before I had to fight that urge to eat something. You know, your belly's telling you you're hungry. And my counselors and my doctors have told me recently, something else I didn't know, that starvation makes your brain shrink. It affects your heart. I have a pacemaker now for a slow heart. If you think that your slow heart rate is because you're an athlete somehow with the exercise that you're doing, which is also part of anorexia, is over-exercising, you're not. You're not. Your heart is slow because your whole body is slow because you're starving yourself. And you know that, and I know that about myself. I know when I'm not eating. I know when I haven't eaten anything in 2 days. I know I start getting dizzy, my stomach hurts. But the bullying piece, I'm not going to speak to the sex abuse piece because I haven't been through that myself, and I don't want to be disrespectful in any way, imagining what that would be like. So I'm going to leave that for another content person to share. For me, bullying was a big part of it, and I have violent sexual encounters in my life. I've been raped. I've had a date rape when I was 16, and I've had a full blown out attack. The date rape was a boy, we were young, and I didn't realize you should be careful in how much you let them touch you because it works them up too much, and then they may be a really nice guy, but now their man brain is taken over and they can really push you to finish something that you really never intended to do in the first place. But that's part of being young, is learning to respect those sexual cues in the other species and not to deliberately work someone up and then turn your back on them. It taught me to be more respectful of how I present myself, so there's no question. And I'm not saying any way that it ever your fault if you've been through some kind of sexual trauma. It's just, they ought to know better. Men know better. They're bigger than us. and they should know better than to hurt us. But so I've been through that, and I was raped by an older man, and he was in his late 20s. He was the older brother of someone who had a keg party. Of course, his parents weren't there. We were in high school, and I met his older brother. I'm sure now, and have been for many years, that he was there casing for young women, young girls, because they're gullible, and they're easier to trick, easier to make a victim. So he did. He talked to me a lot that night. I was 17. It made me feel amazing. I thought he was getting all this attention, and it's not what it turned out to be at all. And I'll tell you about that in a different video. But I have had sexual assault, let's say that. But I've never gone through it as a young person, like a child. You know, a teenager, yes, and it wasn't family. And it wasn't over and over again, but it was enough to mess me up. So I can only imagine any of my viewers that have been through a horrific time as a child. Please care for yourself. You're valuable. You matter. And there are people that want to help you, that really want to help you. So if you don't have the kind of medical guidance that is finding you the help that you need to deal with all of your feelings and your emotions, because they're different, and if you don't get the right training, you don't realize that they're different, and that makes you feel like you can't control yourself and your emotions, and erratic behavior can come, temper can come, overwhelming grief can come, and you want to balance that out. The bullying for me happened when I was in 5th grade. I was 11, and I was at a crosswalk. You know, I lived in the neighborhood of my school, so kids walked to school. Me and another 5th grader that were friends, we got to be crosswalk guards. That was a big deal. You wore an orange thing across your chest, over your back, and then around your waist. And we helped the younger kids, because we were 5th graders. We were the oldest in the school. It was a big deal to be a 5th grader. Now I think they've moved things around, so 5th is in there with 6th, and they kind of feel like middle schoolers, which is a shame to my mind. It's nice to be the top dog in the elementary school for a minute before you start back down at the bottom of the totem pole when you head into middle school and you become a 6th grader. But so I don't know how it is in your area, but that's kind of how it is in our area. They're kind of meshing the two now, and K through 3rd is in one building, and then 3rd through 5th is in another building, and then they go on. It's all convoluted. But the bullying, so I was out crosswalking with my friend, and he was on the other side of the street, and I was in the middle of the street. Cars were coming to my right. There's a corner to my left to turn to head up into the school, and you know how cars wait to pick up their kids. Well, I was managing stop in the middle of the road, let the kids walk behind me, and then I'd go back to the sidewalk, and the adults could move for a few minutes, and then, you know, when we saw a pause, and we could stop so the kids could walk. And what I had was someone, it was a father of one of my classmates, and he was drunk, and he was a fireman, and he was picking his daughter up for school. And what happened, I was the same direction as the street, right? I'm not parallel, or I'm parallel to the street. So he sneaks, I'm turning my back to talk to my friend. So my back is turned to talk to my friend who's got all the kids safely across the street, and I'm gonna walk back to my side of the street, which is the school side. Well, he goes between the curb and me in the middle of the street, and I have a slight hearing loss, and I had a surgery done on it that year also after my accident, and that put me in a recliner for a long time. That was so tough. But anyway, so he's in a big Cadillac, because this is back in the 70s when I was probably 76, 77, probably 77. And so I turned, and my foot went like this. You know, as you turn, you put your right foot out or your left foot out. I was going to the right, so I put my foot out, was turning to face the kids, and walked back to my position on the sidewalk, and he was going between me and the sidewalk, and I didn't hear him because he was moving slow, and I turned and his car rolled, the tire rolled right across my little foot, crushed it. I collapsed in pain. Oh my God, it hurt so bad, and I was just dazed. I was dazed, and all of a sudden, he picked me up. I'm a little skinny thing. He picked me up, put me in the back seat, and I was crying, and I was dazed. I was still in shock. And he went and drove to my parents' house. Now this is sad, okay? This bite of it. My parents were both blind. They were, my dad was partially blind and then lost all of his sight after my mother died in a car accident in 1981. And I was going into my freshman year of high school that September, and she died. She was hit by a drunk driver. She was riding as a passenger in a friend's car, and my dad was with them, and they were both, my mother was killed, both the driver and my dad, who was in the back seat, badly injured. I mean, badly. But that's another story. Anyway, back to my bullying deal. So he rolled over my foot, put me in the car, went to our house, which was a few blocks away. He knew where we lived, and because everybody knew about us because our parents were blind, quite frankly. I mean, that catches your attention. Kids talk about it when they go home. Oh, I've got a girl in my class, her parents are blind. Her mom came today and read us a story from Braille, because my mother would come into school to meet the kids and show them how normal handicapped people can be. And she would read Braille to them, and she would bring her guide dog. That's how she'd get over to the school by herself. She'd bring her cane and just let them be and see what it was all about. My mother was very open about it. So this gentleman goes up to the door, tells my mother that he has hit me, and that she needs to get in the car. So he walks her out to the car. She gets in the back seat with me. She's frantic. What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? And I can't hardly talk to tell her what's happened. And he drives us to the nearest hospital, up to the emergency door room. Okay, the emergency people come to the door. A child's been hit by a car. They immediately bring a bed and, roll the bed out, and the gurney, and it's all about me, and helping my blind mother. And as they get my mother out of the car, then they reach in to get me out of the car, and while they're getting us situated to go in the building, he drives away. None of the nurses talked to him. They were all focused on my blind mother and myself, and getting us out of the car and getting me into the emergency room, getting us both in the emergency room. And no one talked to him, so there was no witness that he was drunk. My mother knows he was drunk because she talked to him. He was in her face at the front door of the house. Your daughter's been hit. She could smell it on him. She told me so. And she was so angry and so upset about that. But you know what's really sad about that? Besides what he did to us, I know he panicked and he was scared, but he didn't handle it right. And we were left with a lot of medical bills. I had to have 3 surgeries on my foot, my little foot, for me to stand on it. I spent a year and a half using a walker, the not with wheels on it, because my foot kept having repair surgeries. First they had to repair the bones, then a huge scar, and I was having problems, so they had to do another surgery. And then they finally did a little plastic surgery to put a thin scar on me instead of the great big 2-inch wide one that I had on me from my repair surgeries. And right before right after my mom died is when we were supposed to go to court. They were going to go to court, not me. At this point, I was 15 when she died. So it took that long to get us to court, and we were so close to the court date, and then she died, and she was the only witness that there was that he was drunk, so the case was dropped. So where's the bullying come in, you say? The bullying comes in. Remember I told you he was the father of one of my classmates, a girl in my class, and she was a popular girl. I was a popular girl. We had friends. I wasn't what you would call a wallflower. I was happy. I was just a happy little kid out, normal kid. After this happened, her friends, my friends, I guess she started talking bad about me at school. I didn't get to see them because I was in surgeries and so forth. She was the one that was in school, and I was telling lies, and her dad wasn't drunk. And I mean, she was a little girl defending her dad, and I understand that. But it made people not talk to me. It made people ignore me and be mean to me that I had been friends with. And I was left with hardly anybody to play with. I couldn't do much, you know, by the time we got into 6th, so I missed the rest of that year, because that happened to me in the spring. I missed the rest of the school year, and then I went and started 6th grade, and I started 6th grade having to get to school with a walker. You know, you take the walker and you put it in front of you, and then you, with one foot, you swing into it, and then you put it out in front of you and you swing into it. Well, I had a book bag, and I had to walk 2 blocks to get to school with that walker. It took me an hour. An hour. Do you think any of the parents that passed me by as they were going into school and passed me by as I was walking to school, you think any of them stopped? Honey, get in the car, let me take you the rest. No. And my parents couldn't drive me to school because they couldn't see, right? Now, I'm used to this at this age. I'm used to it. I've grown up with blind parents. Isn't it a wonder that my mom took such a good care of us? She changed our diapers, kept us safe, and I can't imagine doing that, not being able to see. But that was really hard on my dad and me both, because the financial was really hard on him with my foot surgeries and everything, and I felt guilty. So the bullying started in 6th grade when I got back to school with my walker. You're faking, you're not really hurt. All the kinds of mean things were being said to me, and at that time my body was changing because I was in puberty. I started my period when I was 13, but 12 in 6th grade, no, actually I started when I was 12, that's right, because I was in 6th grade. So I was going through my body changing, and what happens to me, I end up being big-breasted. And back in the 70s, cartoon books, you know, comic books were still really huge. So we were all in our comic books, and in the back of those comic books were all kinds of dumb things they sell, like TV advertising, only that hadn't started yet. Not the way we see it today. And the advertisements were in the back, like make your breasts bigger with this cream and different things. So they would tease me that I got cream out of the back of a comic book. So between that and my foot, I was isolated. I was so lonely. I did not develop a bite back until I got older. I don't know if my bite back is my personality, or if it's something I learned to feel better about myself and stand up for myself. I can't answer that. So don't underestimate what your child might be going through at school for some odd reason. If you're watching me and you've got a child you're worried about, my vlogs are for 50 and over, but anorexia is anorexia. Trauma is trauma. Whether you're a Vietnam vet or you've been regularly sexually abused as a child, PTSD is PTSD, right? You can't compare apples and oranges. But when you're talking about the mind, you have to give respect to the mind as an organ, and it can be overstressed and overworked. My cortisol's through the roof in every one of my blood tests. My liver enzymes are high because I don't eat, so my liver turns in on itself. Your brain tissue can shrink. You lose pads in your face, like I've lost the side pads and the pads under my eyes, directly related to anorexia, the face pads that you have. Not just the natural cheeky right here, but under my eyes, there's no face pads. And so I can kind of look hollow-eyed sometimes. The dark colors underneath is from malnutrition. It's not rosacea. I have rosacea, but it's not bad. I don't know if you can see me or not, but the under eye thing is from malnutrition. So there it is with my first bullying. And I got bullied later in high school for a very different reason, and I'll tell you about that in a different video. That one was really rough. That was not long after my mom died, and I just went through one trauma after another, and my little brain, 15-year-old, 16-year-old brain, couldn't handle some of the things that I went through in high school. And so that's why people who go through trauma can develop an eating disorder. You can be 40 years old, healthy, happy, and your husband dies, and in that grief and over the months of not eating and your stomach hurting from anxiety and stress and your grief is so bad, you can develop an eating disorder later in life. It's things that kick off for you, that kick off unbelievable sadness and grief. And then it can turn into self-loathing. If, like with bullying, it can be self-loathing. Sometimes you can have survivor's guilt if someone you love passed away, and you think that, like, you know, with Vietnam vets and all vets, actually, I don't know why I said Vietnam vets, any vet, that survival guilt. You can also have it if you're a person in your family, like I was, who someone in your family dies and you didn't get to say goodbye. You had no goodbyes. It was sudden. You can have survivor's guilt. Why am I here and he or she had to go? I don't do much of anything. I'm sick, and that person was so active in church or so active at school, or they were so wonderful with animals or whatever. Survivor guilt is tough. But in relation to eating disorders and bullying, I just wanted to give you that. It's something that you need to try and talk to your children about, what they're going through at school, and find out what's going on, because I can guarantee you there's something going on for them to develop an eating disorder. There's a reason why they think they need to go to extremes to lose weight. Whether a friend has taught them to do it, an adult has figured out how to do it, you have to own your own eating and your own eating disorder. You can't blame it on other people. You have to choose to put food in your mouth for nourishment regularly. Get help if you're not sleeping. Get out and walk. Get some exercise. If you're not feeling good and you don't want to get out and move, you've got to move a little bit, or you're never going to get better. So I want to encourage you, if you have trauma in your life and you have an eating disorder, see a doctor, get a therapist, and try and work on yourself, because this is just something that's near impossible to handle on your own. And you don't want to be like me and have an eating disorder for 45 years. 45 years, it's wreaked havoc. All my organs don't work. And I'm afraid of dying from a heart attack or a cardiac arrest. Is more what I would die of, not a heart attack. With the problems my heart has, it would be more of a cardiac arrest, which would be very scary. And it's got me trying. I'm really, really trying to get better. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I hope that you don't have much trauma in your life, but if you do, please give yourself some love and try and get into therapy and see what you can do to help yourself feel better. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.